Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and as I've told you a million times, in bad news there's always a silver lining. U.S. hits highest layoffs since COVID. In July there were 62,075 job cuts announced, according to report. This figure is well above post-pandemic average for the month. Well, remember what happened during the pandemic? Crypto went crazy. If you're one of these people that has lost your job, you have one killer option. I didn't roll over a 401k to my partner iTrustCapital, but I did open IRAs with them. But if you are laid off from a job, or if you retire or whatever, you can roll over a 401k into an IRA at iTrustCapital. They can help you do it. They have they're probably the biggest crypto IRA company there is, but you can also invest in gold and silver through the IRA as well. If you're not interested in that, of course, you can open a premium custody account. I did, sent XRP right into it. And if you're a new account, use the promo code down below. Just click on that button, $100 funding bonus. You go to iTrustCapital.com/XRP Army. XRP's sitting flat. The market's at about 3.87 trillion. Let me hit the refresh button, see if that's 3.9 trillion. It's kind of like the market's just kind of sitting around watching. Here's what's going on.
The chart of the day is presented by Crypto.com, the leading crypto platform trusted by over 100 million users worldwide. Let's take a look at the chart of the day. XRP slipped to $2.97 in its sharpest decline in weeks, shedding 5.4% over a 23-hour stretch as retail selling overwhelmed order books. The move came on surging volumes that eclipsed daily averages, but whale wallets quietly absorbed the dip, scooping 440 million tokens worth $3.8 billion. The divergence between
the whales swallowed the dip. Here's my prediction. I think that the big institutions and all the big players behind the scenes know all about where XRP is going to go. I don't think Dom from EZA came out of nowhere with $1,000 by 2030. These guys are plugged into what's going on. I think that these big boys that know where this is going, they know that all these retail people that have been sitting here for the last 5 to 10 years even, they know that most of those people are going to be out at 5 to 20. They're well aware of the XRP supply constraints, and they're going to swallow all of that like a whale shark does with minnows. Just open their mouths and swallow it all up and take it. And I believe that that's where you could have, at some point, people could have a hard time even getting XRP. Look at this. Ripple will be introduced at the Fed and will make XRP a global reserve currency. This has already been decided. Ripple's applied for a Fed master account. Don't forget, XRP is about to melt faces. It's not an ordinary asset. It's infrastructure. Well, according to David Schwartz, critical infrastructure. I think that was his words. Hope this guy's right. Now, this guy was the one that it was obvious that his attorneys had warned him to quit talking bad about MicroStrategy. I'm not talking bad about MicroStrategy. I'm just showing you what he said. You can decide for yourself. But he says he came back out again. Now he says, I'm not staying silent.
Guys, I said I would not comment anymore about MicroStrategy, but then Michael Saylor comes out and tweets this. I don't know if you can read this, but let me just share what it is. Strategy today announced an update to its MSTR equity ATM guidance. Basically what he ends up doing is he changed and flip-flopped on the terms that he stated only 2 weeks ago on his earnings call. Now, when the MNAV is below 2.5, MicroStrategy will tactically issue MSTR stock to pay interest on debt obligations, fund preferred equity dividends, and 3, when otherwise deemed advantageous to the company. 2 weeks ago, he said he wasn't going to do that. Now this? Before I continue, I just want to make it abundantly clear that I am not suicidal. Yet, despite what my lawyers advised me, I feel that it's necessary to at least speak out on this matter. I'm not going to allow big Bitcoin to keep me silent.
I won't play the rest of it, but I've got more. This is the thing that he was reading right here. This was put out by Michael Saylor. Strategy today announced an update to its MSTR equity ATM guidance. So basically, they're saying that there will be more master shares issued to buy Bitcoin. I personally would not want to be one of the shareholders as they dilute my shares. I can tell you that. Well, I went and found a Greg Kidd a Greg Kidd clip where he talks about master. Listen to this.
One of the things that that I mentioned at the outset is that MicroStrategy has been on this stunning run, and part of it is because Saylor is borrowing more money to buy more Bitcoin. As he says during the talk, the only thing better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin. There are some remnants, I would say, of the 2021 cycle. I remember when SBF was talking about DeFi a little bit. Things start to sound a little Ponzi-ish. What would you say to that?
Well, I say he's stacking up his Ponzi scheme against the U.S. government's Ponzi scheme. And the reason he's saying the U.S. government's Ponzi scheme is if there's one thing you can see that has been consistent between Democrats and Republicans, neither one of them has reined in spending. The deficits have grown and the debt has grown. And really what he's saying is, his cost of capital is going to be less than the real cost of capital for what he's paying when you factor in the inflation that comes from the U.S. government, whether it's Democrats or Republican, spending more money than they have. And so they have a debased currency. And when you mark that currency against something that has no debasement, he's just doing the math. And to him, it's physics. There's this problem with it. When it goes to infinity, it would mean that all the value in the world is Bitcoin, and nothing else is left. And so at some point, this has to flatten out. But, as Chuck Prince said, when we had to run up to the financial crisis, is the music's still playing. So everybody's dancing. And what Michael Saylor is saying, he doesn't see the end of the song anytime soon. And as long as the music's playing, he's going to keep dancing.
That didn't sound good. Now, folks, you've got to understand, my dad used to tell me about a Will, I'm trying to remember his name. He was like a comedian, but he's almost like a philosopher. I'm going to think of his name in a minute, but my dad used to tell me a story, Will something Follies. Anyway, the guy used to tell a story about how the Indians would when they saw a cowboy coming, they liked to go behind the cowboy and in order to see what the cowboy was looking at. In other words, they wanted to see what the cowboy's point of view, because this was a potential enemy. They wanted to see things through the eyes of the cowboy. And that's kind of what this reminds me, what I think of here is, we know that the Bitcoin people hate all other digital currencies. We know there's been a war on XRP and all. But if you watch this clip, it gives you a peek. It lets you look at what a Bitcoin maxi's looking at. If you just think about it, their greatest fear. They've had a regulatory monopoly all this time. The money has not flown into Bitcoin because it's superior digital assets. It's flowed into Bitcoin because they've had a regulatory monopoly. They've had an entire PR machine. CNBC won't put anybody on to talk about anything. Recently, they'll let people talk about Ethereum, maybe Solana. But it's been Bitcoin just shoved down your throat for over a decade. And so if you watch this, you can kind of see why they would be so freaked out. Because if the money starts flowing in mass, if the population figures out what XRP people already know, which is utility is what's going to win the day. you can see why they would be terrified. Listen to this clip. Imagine how terrified, because if the money does not keep flowing in mass, mostly to Bitcoin, Houston, we have a problem.
When someone makes the argument that, based on current GAAP earnings, MicroStrategy has a PE of like 5 or something, and then they say, well, our competitors have 20, we should also have 20. I generally would say, right along with you, that I don't view that as an accurate comparison, because you're comparing a highly cyclical expectation of GAAP earnings and losses, even if Bitcoin does continue to appreciate, but at a bumpy pace, versus a very smooth expectation. Right. Now, fraudulent, it is GAAP earnings. It is they're following a certain accounting standard. So I personally wouldn't use that term, but I generally would say that I wouldn't. That's certainly not how I would evaluate the company. I would instead look at other metrics that I use to evaluate the company.
Let me ask you a question on that then. Why is MicroStrategy doing that? Why is the company putting out slides like this? Why are they doing it?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, that was one slide out of over 100 slides, but why are they doing it? You'd have to ask them. Any company is trying to put their best foot forward. And
the guy's name was Will Rogers. That's what I was trying to think of.
Say, this is why you should own our company. All sorts of different companies do it. That's their approach. That's not the slide I agree with. I think they had many good slides in their deck. That's maybe one of a couple slides I certainly wouldn't make the argument for.
Okay, fair enough. I think it will. So let me just say this: there are no Ponzi schemes that don't fail. Ponzi schemes fail, and that's when they become known as Ponzi schemes. Bernie Madoff was never a Ponzi scheme until he failed. And so it's possible that Bitcoin rallies forever. It's possible that there's never a down case and they continue to create recurring earnings. And in that case, MicroStrategy will never be declared a Ponzi scheme.
Well, there certainly will be down periods in Bitcoin. I think even Bitcoin bulls, any rational one would say
my point is that as long as and this is why the adjacent part is the key bit, Bitcoin Master will never be a Ponzi scheme as long as the ETF continues to appreciate, the Bitcoin underlying asset continues to appreciate, whether it's bouncy or not, sort of irrelevant. It'll be a Ponzi scheme when they no longer have access to financial markets to compensate their preferred shareholders, their coupon shareholders, and they must sell Bitcoin to do that. That will take the MNAV to negative. That'll create a Ponzi-like environment when they can't get that next sucker to buy the preferred because there's no income. Or it will never be a Ponzi scheme if they find a way to actually turn this asset into an earning asset, which is why I keep coming back to that question. So I think it's very clear that in no Ponzi scheme history has anyone ever said, see, it's a Ponzi scheme. They suspect it might be a Ponzi scheme, but in the backward-looking history, first it has to fail. And then, let me tell you something. Fraud will be the least of Saylor's problems. That slide will live in infamy.
Oh boy. Now, part of the Bitcoin narrative machine, the PR machine, of course, is Anthony Pompiano. Here, the eToro founder makes a comment about the demand that they've had for XRP, and Pomp swiftly gets him back to the Bitcoin script. You can see how he does it.
And then, first crypto rally until we started trading for our clients. So clients started trading Bitcoin on eToro in 2013. For 4 years, everybody, my board, management, they were like, Yoni, you were going all in this Bitcoin. Nothing really happened. We were like wasting so much resources in it. And then 2017 came. By the end of 2017, 95% of our clients were trading Bitcoin and XRP and ETH. We listed ETH when it was about $4. So I've always been a big fan and still am of Bitcoin and of blockchain, tokenization, digital asset.
See, Pomp knows that the tokenization, this guy's dripping the utility stuff in there that Bitcoin can't do, so he has to steer him back.
It's and I have no doubt that we are still very early stages. It's going to continue.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Like, let's talk about Bitcoin, then we talk about the kind of rest of the market. But with Bitcoin specifically, why do you think it's still
let's just talk about the bull case for Bitcoin. Don't talk about any of those others.
early, given it's a $2+ trillion asset, $120,000 price point?
I mean, that's so pathetic. Speaking of, Caitlin Long is at the SALT conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'm jealous. I love Wyoming and Montana. I love those places. Here she is talking about the Bitcoin crypto market structure bill. They have to keep it going.
Now, obviously, all eyes are on the Clarity Act, which essentially lays out the rules of the road for crypto. And the House passed the Clarity Act last month. Now it moves on to the Senate. What do you think happens there? Do you think that it will, in fact, pass the Senate in its current form? And if it does, what will change for the industry? Will anything change for Custodia Bank?
Well, for Custodia, no, because we're focused on stablecoins. So for us, the Genius Act was the most important one. For those that, like, for example, Kraken, a sponsor of this event, more focused on the exchange aspect, not on stablecoins, the Clarity Act matters more to them. But I do believe it will pass. It won't be the House version. There is the Senate is doing a rewrite. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. Will it be the Senate version or the House version that ultimately gets signed into law? But President Trump has indicated that he wants the Clarity Act signed into law before the end of the year. And his son, Eric Trump, is coming to this event, one of the speakers at this event. So I do expect that Clarity will pass. I just don't know exactly yet what it will look like.
Okay, we're going to go into DAIXRP.com, the Patreon. If you'd rather join through YouTube, click the join button below any of these videos, or you can hit subscribe on X. We do the full video, plus the extended video with no commercials in there. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. Here we go.